Burn it.
Just on. Dolphin will be here. I think so,
Is the camera working? That one was just looking recorded. We don't have
We'll be video.
Good morning. I'll call the July 10th meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. Today, for the first time, we're having a Zoom link to record the meetings. And so we don't have the PAN network that we've had in the past. So this is something new. But in addition to the phone call in, you can watch our meetings now on the Zoom link. And so just continues to make it open and accessible to anyone who wants to hear our meetings. So the first item on our agenda is to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
It's been a motion by Supervisor Kiefer, seconded by Jorgensen to approve the agenda. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Public comment. This is a time when anyone who wants to comment on any county issue that's not on the agenda can do so. Yes, sir. You need to be recognized. State your name, please.
Larry Boris, and I'm from Rudd. And I just wondering, I guess I'm concerned that there's a lot of activity with some wind farms, new wind farms coming in. Some of the way this is going on, there's no formal notification to anyone. There's no county recognition as far as I know, or as far as anybody knows. And I know some of the counties around Mitchell County is one of them. Worth County has been instrumental in that. Tama County, where they've actually put moratoriums on for now until they can get better county governance. And I wondered if you guys have looked at any of these ordinances that have come around in pertains to the wind farms. Worth County has got a very, very good one that they put in that a lot of counties are looking at. I don't like the way that these companies have come in, and they the one that's here, I know got in trouble in Minnesota with a large farmer up there. They're kind of using his name and using him for reference when he had nothing to do with it. So if this is the business practices, I'm afraid that we need to be looking at it, and I've kind of been looking, and I think that you guys have been pretty busy or focusing on pipeline issues. And I'm concerned maybe that this wind farm, these guys are sneaking in and we're not looking at it. And you address any of those issues?
The way this works, we address issues that are on our agenda when they're on our agenda. We don't respond to comments during the public comment period like this.
Okay.
That's just kind of been the long-standing way it works. We appreciate your remarks, and we'll talk more about that, if that should be an item that we'll talk about and discuss or review in action at a future meeting. We're certainly aware, all the supervisors are aware of things that are going on in that regard, but at this time, we'll discuss it at some of the later meeting, and thank you for bringing it up. there anyone else who'd like to make a public comment?
Along that same issue then.
Yes, Boyd, would you just,
Boyd Campbell,
thank you.
from Rudd. Is it something that we should put on for your next meeting then? Or, I mean, are we just okay now that we brought it up?
I think it's been addressed and, you've made, the Floyd County resident, you made your concern aware to us. And, we'll take the next step. Thank you. Is there anyone listening on the phone line that'd like to make a public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to agenda item 3, review and action regarding approval of the June 26th. Yes, June 26th minutes. They were rather long. Members of the board, do you have a chance to look those over?
I read those. I'll make a motion to approve the June 26th meeting minutes.
Second.
It's been moved by Supervisor Kiefer, seconded by Jorgensen to approve the minutes of the June 26th meeting. Further discussion? Any comment from anyone listening on the phone? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of the June 26th meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Item 4. Review action regarding approval of claims. Did any of you see anything in the claims that you wanted to comment on or didn't find an answer to?
No, I didn't. Jacob Page called me sometime after the 4th and he had got some prices, some bids on a front end loader or something, I think, and they come in higher than what he expected. And he told me that would be on this expense report, but I didn't see it on there anywhere.
That'd be on the next one.
I guess maybe they don't have an invoice for it yet, if you didn't see it on this claim run.
Okay.
So whenever, they enter their own claims, so.
Yeah, he thought it would be on today's, but that's okay. That's the only thing I noticed that wasn't there, so I thought might be, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the claims.
I'll second.
It's been motioned by Supervisor Jorgensen, seconded by Kiefer to approve the claims as presented. Further discussion? Those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Item 6, no, make it 5. Updates or on various boards, commissions, activities since the last meeting.
On the 28th of June, I attended the Trail City Main Street Chamber of Commerce meeting, and they discussed mainly the party in the park that week and then the 4th of July events. So that's all I had.
Larry and myself have been going through the process meeting with dispatch, and I think we're headed on the right track there. I think there's good direction going, ongoing ambulance communication with various people of the ambulance commission, and believe that was it.
All right, I had a meeting with County Social Services, IT board, essentially is what it's amounts to. The board is not IT, excuse me, the Human Relations board that oversees the meetings of the staff members, makes recommendations to the full board. And also attended the CSS meeting in New Hampton. And that was the extent of my meetings since the last board meeting. Item 6, update on law enforcement center courthouse project. Including progress report, payment afterwards, applications, potential change orders, and review action as necessary. Item A was no receipt of the punch list items.
I have a question before.
Yes.
Who did the planning out there, Gloria, in the atrium area? The tree and the shrubs?
John,
Did you buy them from Otto?
you did,
Okay. I was just required, I saw that today, so.
or much less than
Okay.
How's that punch list doing?
They are working on the punch list. I emailed that to you in a separate email like a week prior to the agenda packet. And it's pretty lengthy, especially like young plumbing. And I'm not sure what the status of them is. They have not seen anything of them. I almost think they've gone AWOL on us and probably will not get some retainage money, the way it looks. We're just not seeing anything of them.
Oh,
So I don't know, we have a meeting this afternoon.
What's that?
We have a meeting this afternoon?
No, he canceled it.
You cancel it?
You know, we sent Young Plumbing at $13,000 for an annual maintenance agreement, and they haven't finished their work yet. So just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, that's because the HVAC system has been on for a year and a half.
How much retainage do we have left from them, do you know?
Did you look at, I have to look at the PCOs to see where it's at with retainage. I don't know, there's several line items you have to add up on that pay app that you have, not PCOs, but the pay app that you have. You
Okay,
just look at all the line items for young plumbing and that would be your, add those up, that's your retainage for that.
so what do we do with this punch list if they don't come back to clean it
That's
up?
where Jason would go, would file against their bond. Well, we get somebody else to do the work, and then Jason would file against their bond as well. That's what I have a bond for.
Hmm.
Or that's why we would have a bond on them.
Are they, any communications are going down?
I've not heard anything on any of the punch list things. I know Dean Schneider has remedied several punch list items, but I've not heard from any of the other vendors yet.
well,
Yeah,
that is concerning.
It is, yeah.
And I think every attempt should be made to resolve that issue next week, so we know where we stand.
yeah,
Because the roof work has to be finished, it's not like we're just gonna let it wet,
no,
finished, unfinished, so. Let's make efforts to, make those contacts in the next week and get a resolution to this.
Mhm. And Young is probably the most concerning, right, Gloria? Will Dean Snyder do their, the cleanup that they have to do?
yeah. I don't think there's probably much left on the Dean Schneider side. Thinking of them, they have the sub with Cole Excavating, who needs to fix the property line issue over here, see the grass over here. But I did follow up last week with that. They don't intend to do the property line over here. They want to come and do both this project and that project at the same time. And because of the germination period for seeding the grass, they won't be here till after August 15th. Because
What-
that will have grass seeding as well.
What about Paulson Electric? Was there anything on there?
Yeah, they have, I don't think there's a vendor that doesn't have something. on their list.
Yes, Chair recognizes Gordy Bobby.
Yeah, Gordon Bogey Coalition for Better County Government. Has anybody put a deadline on this thing? Have we got a line in the sand that says you gotta be done? Or is this thing just gonna go on for years and years? The people want an answer. The citizens of this county deserve an answer. We keep doing $80,000 change orders and we keep going on and on and on. Has anybody drawn a line in the sand that said this is it?
I don't think so. I mean,
The punch list items make certain things substantially complete. And so the vendor should be working with Samuel's group to get things remedied on their issues that are unresolved yet.
but there's no date when that has to be done, is what you're asking, right? Gordon?
That's what I'm asking. The citizens of this county want to know when this thing is gonna be done.
That's, they're would have been a scheduled meeting this afternoon for all the vendors to come to the table and the county to come to the table, Samuel's group, the architect, but that's not happening this afternoon. It sounds like it got changed.
So doesn't anybody think we ought to put a deadline on this? I guess I'm asking you three, don't you think we ought to push a little bit to say, this thing has got to be done by January 1st or something, or is this just gonna keep going on and on?
Or else what?
Or else what? Get it done.
I
Get
know.
people in here to get it finished, but we cannot, the taxpayers of this county cannot sit here and say, okay, we're just gonna keep spending money and spending money and spending money. When's it gonna be done? That's all we wanna know.
There's no money being spent because it's retainage for them.
Yeah,
It's not being spent until they get the work done.
but that's all. I think somebody ought to put a deadline on these contractors, on the engineer and on everybody and say, hey, this has been going on long enough. Let's get this done.
I think one of the issues of that maybe, Gordy, is with young plumbing and heating, they probably won't come back.
No,
So we'll have to find someone else to complete their work. And we don't want, I don't think I'd want to put them behind the 8 ball because of somebody else's issues.
well,
And
yeah.
bring in
that's
someone
why-
new in.
That's why this thing's all gotta be brought together and somebody's gotta draw a line in the sand as far as the taxpayers are concerned. And I think giving Young $13,000 maintenance agreement, I disagree with that completely. They ain't got their work done yet, but they're getting $13,000 to come and work on something that ain't done.
Yeah, I agree.
The maintenance contract is on the units, and the units have been working for 1.5 years. That's what the maintenance contract is for, not for the ductwork that they don't have the escutcheons around them or things like that. That has nothing to do with the maintenance contract.
Item B, review action regarding pay app. Number 43 for $83,083. Let's see. Where is that on the packet? Under
Page 6, I think.
All right, thank you.
Is that right?
Are you familiar with that one, Dennis? What's involved in that?
No.
I'm not either.
Gordon?
So if you go to page 9 of the pay app,
Thank you.
not of your packet, but of the pay app itself, it's page 9 of 10.
All right.
And that's where it starts with what's been completed for this pay period. So there's modifications to the entry east wall. There's 3rd and 4th floor plumbing fixtures. The additional wall in room 112, which is the county social services office. The Paulson Electric's work on that new panel. General conditions. Let's see, power and data for the conference room that Paulson Electric did. And on page 10 of 10, there's the fire alarm devices and electrical that Paulson completed. Dean Schneider's credit and general conditions for May.
All right. Further discussion on this?
This one, just whatever your decision is, if you intend to use ARPA dollars on it. The total is $83,083 and $83,083.84.
Isn't that what we've been getting from?
Yep, I would suggest you could do that. At some point, because we expected to spend more money out of the general, or out of ARPA dollars or general fund in fiscal year 23. That money is unused, so in the fiscal year 24 budget, we'll have to amend at some point to spend money from the previous year that wasn't spent. So we'll have to amend the budget at some point, but we have plenty in ARPA dollars budgeted to cover this.
Okay.
Or general fund, either one, whichever you choose to use.
I'll make a motion to pay app number 43 for $83,083.84 for the use of American Rescue Act $100.
Oh, second.
All right, it's been moved by Supervisor Jorgensen and seconded by Keeper to approve payout 43 for $83,000 from the American Rescue Plan Act funding. Further discussion? Those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye, motion carried. Action item 7, review action regarding Allers and Cooney invoices for pipeline services and use of ARPA funds. In your packet, you found this month's total for services provided by Allers and Cooney for the pipeline and the right-of-way ordinance, for a total of, let's see, $5,759.88, including what those services are for, in case you're interested. And there's various calls made regarding the ordinance preparation. Review of the county draft report, correspondence with me. I'm the chair. The person, our attorney, contacts one of us. That's the way it kind of works. Again, we can't discuss it all together because it's a board meeting. Preparation for the zoning meeting on June 13th. Attention to the zoning meeting, coming to the zoning meeting, driving, appearing, and going back, scanning the assorted documents and sending to the client. That's what it costs. And so that's a little more detailed description of what's in there, but the total amount is $5,759.88.
Mark,
Yes.
that includes that $665 that was already paid. It's just on this next billing because I hadn't received the check yet.
All right.
So it's actually that bill is $5,094.88.
Okay.
And then the second bill is $4,357.50.
Yes. Correct.
So to exclude that second from the bottom number, because those have already been paid.
And there's a long list of that for the share of the services. We share the cost of filings with the Iowa Utilities Board with 6 other counties that are in the contested case with Summit and Navigator. And because we do that, we have a seat at the table when those contested cases are heard. It's like being involved in a lawsuit. It gives those people who haven't signed a voluntary easement the opportunity to be heard as a collective group. We feel it's very important as a board that we do that. And that's why we're involved with this attorney that works in this area. Questions, comments from the board?
Well, what are we up to now for this total to Ayers County with the Timberville and the pipeline process? So it's
I can't connect down here in this room,
Okay.
so I can't tell you for sure.
We can get that information.
I can get it for a future meeting now.
okay. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I just wonder how far we want to go when we got other counties that are going through the process ahead of us, and we could essentially sit on the sidelines and see how they turn out. Is this a good use of taxpayer dollars to continue to do this when we can see what's gonna probably happen? other counties that are in the process further.
Well, the way the intervention process works, other counties can't intervene on behalf of properties in Floyd County. Any of the properties, and there are many still, who haven't signed a voluntary easement, including the new lateral line that's coming down from St. Andrew, where none of those properties have been considered yet. And there are still properties both on the original Summit line and on the Navigator line that haven't. So another county, if we stop funding and didn't fund and didn't continue with the intervention process, those other counties couldn't pick up and speak on our behalf. That's not the way it works. We have to be represented in the intervention. So the idea of just stopping is well, in my opinion, negates all the efforts that we've made so far and would prohibit us from engaging in the best interests of those property owners.
Is there a ballpark, or probably want to take a guess at this time on what I won't do it, I guess it's you probably shouldn't ballpark it either without looking.
I just can't get to those fast.
I understand.
For instance, the planning and zoning meeting is again, here again, coming up this week.
12th, I believe.
I think it's not on the bulletin board.
I did not see it on the bulletin board. I don't know if they're actually having a meeting or not. It was.
We are having a
Just,
recent,
excuse me, I'll recognize it, but it was some question about that. It's no longer posted. So I'm not sure, but you know, you have to have the attorney present to answer questions about the other things. So, you know, I mean, if you're hungry, you know, sit down. So I guess there's kind of a question, is there a planning and zoning meeting? Is it a discussion or is it a hearing? What is happening?
We are doing a rezone on Wednesday, July 12th at 9 a.m. in this office. They decided that it was too late to do a publication because of some technical things that were going on. So we will not be having a pipeline ordinance meeting that day. It'll be set for another day.
I thought it got published on Twitter.
I was just told this morning that there will be, that it'll have to be a different date. That's all I was told. And I have sent out emails to our board and they will let me know right away when, what date would be available for that.
There we are. Because we're not having it now.
We are having one, but it's a rezone.
Yeah. The board minutes that we were just approved were pretty extensive about the meeting that we expected to have on the 12th regarding the zoning ordinance, but that's changed. Nothing we had anything to do with, obviously, we were just informed. But back to the issue at hand, the approval of the funding for Allers and Tuning.
I'll make a motion to approve funding to Alvers County with the use of ARPA funds. Was it 54?
54-18-56.
54-18-56, yeah.
No,
No?
No,
Okay.
Earlier than a smaller number, 5409.
it's there's two bills in your packet. One is for the pipeline and right-of-way ordinance. That balance due is $5,094.88. And the other one is for the intervention process is $4,357.50.
So which
so
one?
the total is
I would like to list them in the minutes as the two separate purposes, but if the total would be 9,000. But I'd like to list them for the pipeline and right-of-way ordinance of 5,094.88. And for the intervention on utility boards proceedings, 4,357.50.
Okay, I'll redo that motion. Make a motion to approve Ayers and Cooney invoices for $5,094.88 for the pipeline resolution. And also $4,357.50 for the intervention part of it. Is that correct? Okay.
I'll second the motion. Is there further discussion? Any comments from anyone listening on the phone? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Motion is carried. Moving on to our next item. Item 8, review action regarding invoice for public health generators and invoice from Mtg Industries for $1,425 and use of ARPA funds.
So the previous board had approved the generator for the public health building. And then it came up after that they needed a stand. To raise to put the unit up off the ground. And so they had L&J Welding build that stand, and that was $1,425. And so this would, again, could either be paid out of general fund or be paid out of ARPA dollars. The generator itself was paid for out of ARPA dollars, the generator and the labor for Perry Nova. Was paid for out of ARPA dollars.
There's a stand been installed.
Yeah, it's all in place.
It's all in
Everything's done. Yeah.
Make a motion to pay L&J Industries $1,425 for the generator stand using ARPA funds.
A second.
All right, it's been moved by Supervisor Jorgensen and seconded by Kiefer to approve $1,425 from ARPA funding for a generator stand from L&J Industries. Further discussion? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Item 9, review and action regarding letters of engagement for establishing Floyd County drainage. Excuse me, auditor car. Looks like we've blown right past our public hearing. Maybe we should go to that. I'm sorry about that. We have on our agenda item 10 and 9:15, and public hearing on general obligation emergency communications loan agreement to borrow money thereafter. By putting it at 9:15 means that that's the earliest we can have it. We can have it anytime after that. So let's move to that now. So we're on item 10, public hearing on general obligation emergency communications loan agreement to borrow money thereunder. All right, at this time, I will open up the hearing. And that information is found in what page on our packet?
26.
Thank you. Thank you. You find it?
Yeah, it's right after L&J, and then you got Google and then,
Okay.
and then
Oh, I'm on this. Oh, that's maybe it's in the agenda packet addition, right? Yeah, take a look at it here.
No person should be in the record.
Okay. I got through 16 and 16 and didn't see it. Okay, what do you think? Okay, thanks. All right, we're proposing to borrow money. Board of Supervisors. In the principal amount not to exceed $5.1 million for the purpose of paying the cost to that extent of acquiring and installing improvements to the E911 emergency communication system. The loan agreement is proposed to be entered into and the bonds will be issued under the vendor authority in section 331 of the Iowa Code. And the loan agreement and the bonds will constitute general obligations of the county. And as stated in the hearing, now is the time and place for oral or written objections to be filed and made to the proposal entering into the loan agreement. After receiving any objections, the county may determine to enter into the loan agreement, in which case the decision will be final unless appealed to the district court for 15 days. Auditor Carr, were there any written comments for or against the project?
I received nothing in favor of or against.
Is there anyone here today that'd like to speak in favor or opposed to our effort to borrow $5.1 million for E911 communications? Mark? Yeah, Chair recognizes,
Ben Captain.
thank you.
I just want to thank everybody for being timely on taking care of this. I know this is not something that, especially now with everything that's going on financially with the courthouse, everything that you guys wanted to deal with, but it's a very important project and the emergency responders really truly appreciate the effort you put into this and moving forward. So I just want to thank you.
Any other oral comments? For against? We will, after the hearing is closed, we'll comment. Anyone listening on the phone who'd like to make a comment regarding the bonding for the E911? Chair recognizes Gordon Bogie.
I guess I have questions about why not let Motorola carry this ball for a couple of years and then bond it for maybe 3 million? You don't know yet where this courthouse LEC is gonna end up and how much money you're gonna borrow, or where you're gonna be at. Does the county really need to go into $5 million more debt long-term? And that's the question I have about it. I would really want to consider letting Motorola carry this ball for a couple of years till you get a final number. And then bond for that at that time. And see how it comes out. But I understand Gloria wants to bond the 5 million because she thinks she can loan part of it back out until you've got to pay Motorola. Is that true?
We can answer your comments when the hearing is closed. We heard what you said,
Okay,
and we'll answer those remarks. I heard two things. One was why not consider accepting Motorola's financing for a couple of years, or was it
Yeah.
couple three? Which one was it?
couple three,
Couple three.
till you get a final number when the project is done.
And then determine bonding.
Yes,
Okay, and then the second thing that you stated was something about Auditor Carr's belief of that the money could be used, once we took it in, that the money would be then kept in our account and somehow we're going to benefit from that. Is that correct?
well, the 13.5 million that bonded for the courthouse. She came up with $2 million extra. Is
Okay,
that correct?
but no, let's just focus on
Well,
one issue
yeah.
at a time.
But
And we're talking about the bonding for the 911 system right now, so that's the other thing that you're.
If you bond for the 5 million, what if you don't need it?
Fair enough, I got your question.
Yeah, that's my thing. Does the county need to go into long-term debt for another $5 million when maybe we only need to borrow 3? The citizens of the county would like you guys to tighten your budget somewhere and figure out how to pay for this without bonding.
Okay, I've got about 3 things that I want to respond to, Lord knows,
Okay.
when we get the hearing closed. So, upon hearing that, those of you who support the, and have been involved in this since the start, you know how the funding stream works. Do you have any comment?
Yes, I think from the
You
beginning,
name who you
Brian
are.
Chambers, Marble Rock Fire.
Thank you.
I think from the beginning of the process, we've all been very cognizant of the fact our budget has to be tight. I think Sherry's done a great job of putting the numbers together, and they're good numbers. If we forego bells and whistles as the process moves along, I believe we can stay under the budget. And I think it's important for the taxpayers that we do forego bells and whistles and stay under the amount. But from the beginning, we knew we had to be real strict in our spending. So I don't think you're gonna find a lot of fat in that number.
Because we took a lot of comment and considered at numerous times the proposal from Motorola. I see the Motorola representative here. Would you like to comment regarding not specifically the percentage rate, but there's a date that we have to do this by, or the prices are no longer guaranteed, correct?
Correct, that's August.
Please state your name and respond to that question.
Yes, my name is Sherry Schmitz. I'm the direct account manager from Motorola, and there is incentives tied to August 24th, 2023. Ready to move forward with the current pricing we have on the table.
Is there any further comments from anyone in attendance? Anyone listening on the phone? Chair recognizes Bill Buck.
The payout process could take several years anyway, and we don't collect that money until that time, correct, Gloria?
Right.
Okay, so I mean, it's not like tomorrow or whenever it's approved, that whole dollar amount is done. It's in steps. Like Gordy said, don't do it all right now, but I mean, it is a step program before, and like the tower and everything else, is that possibly 24 months, maybe, total?
Up to 18.
18, okay, but anyway, it's just a stepping stone.
Chair recognizes Bill Chatfield.
Off the top of my head, I don't have it in front of me, but Motorola's payment milestones were 25% when you sign the paperwork, another 60% when the equipment is delivered. So that's roughly 85% of their total bid of 4.3 million. The rest would be due upon completion of the project, the last remaining 15%. So I believe when we talked bonding stuff before, you could bond in 2 separate steps. So you wouldn't have to take it all at once. So there is a possibility that you could take 85% of the 4.3 up front and then do a secondary bond when the project is closed out to finalize that. So if we come in at 4.4 million total project cost, we're not borrowing the 5.1. But, we don't have an extra $700,000 borrowed that we're paying interest on, because if I remember correctly, you can't pay that back early. There's so many years before you can pay that back. So if bonding is the route you go and not leasing from Motorola, as a taxpayer, I would prefer to see you guys go that route, bond the money in 2 separate steps, a large percentage up front to cover the major front end costs. And then once the project is finished or near completion, we know what the total dollar amount will be. You can do a smaller secondary bond to pay that off, the remainder. Is that correct? I assume she's from Northland.
I am from Northland. That is correct.
And just.
Yeah,
identify
Heidi
yourself,
Poole
thank you.
from Northland
fine.
Securities.
there's some benefits to doing it, 2 bonds, versus 1 bond. There's pros and cons to both.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Yes, could those listening on the phone silence their phones? You're getting some feedback into our boardroom. Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Amy.
First, just to give you a little bit of idea of, if you do all right now, you do know what the interest rate is. We don't know where the interest rate will be in a year or 2. There are costs associated each time you go out to the bonding process, including legal and financing. This county is also going out for a rating with S&P, which will lower the county's overall interest rate. And then the other thing to take into account is right now is having money in the bank right now pays, versus 2 years ago where you couldn't put anything into a CD and make any money. Right now, you can make 3, 4, 5% very easily. So there's some benefit to doing it in one bond. And then there's some benefit knowing, exact cost and bonding 2 tons. But there's the risk of not knowing where their interest rate is at, a year or 2 down the road. And then the question is if there's leftover money, what can you do? Well, the hearing does provide that you can spend it for any of the E911 purposes. You can use those proceeds to help lower a debt payment for 1 year. And then the third option is that you could hold additional hearings to repurpose bond proceeds as well. Say that again, you can hold additional hearings to repurpose bond proceeds for additional projects to what the board, what your needs are at that point.
All right, yes,
Merlin's like this.
first, Marlon, you have the floor.
I agree with Gordy. I think we ought to lease it for 2 to 3 years. Nothing against Motorola, but it's like the courthouse. If you lease it, people get their job done, they get the rest of their money. If not, they might not get it done, and then we're stuck with it. So if we lease it for 2 to 3 years until they get the project completely done, and then bond it and pay them off, then you only have 1 bond. And you know exactly where you're at.
All right, any further comments before we close the hearing and get into some general discussion here? Hearing none, the hearing is closed. If there's a motion to close the hearing, correct?
You don't have to have a motion.
Okay. Well, then I'll declare if there's any further comment, now, hearing none, I'll close the hearing at 9:47. Well, that's why we have public hearings, to hear different proposals. I'll be straight up. We didn't come here with the idea that we were going to decide to change to have all of a sudden take the funding source from Motorola and in 2 or 3 years decide we're going to bond. That's not why it's on the agenda. So one first thing, before we answer all those questions that Gordy had, you're gonna have to tell us about that bonding proposal, how much it is, or the contract with Motorola for services, because now we're in a whole nother area to compare one thing to the next. So now I'm gonna ask you to give us, what's the percentage rate for how long can we purchase things from the Motorola?
So I have provided you leasing information and a sample contract for the leasing opportunity. I have not locked in the rate for that until you tell me that you want to go that route. I can certainly get that information to you quickly. And the information that I provided you previously, I believe that was generated like, where are we now, in June, early June. I can only hold those rates for 30 days. That's why I have not, I've given you an example of what that rate for leasing would be. It's comparable, roughly, you've seen that, maybe, she has the information that I provided earlier that would give you that percentage.
4.25.
Okay. It is very up to you. It's not gonna affect my proposal to you, whether you use the Motorola leasing or you bond. My proposal to you is independent of how you fund it. So it's totally up to you which way you wanna go, what works best for your county as far as funding.
So it would take another period of time to generate a current proposal with perhaps a different, with an updated interest rate.
Correct. I would be able to present to you something that you would be able to sign within 30 days. That's the longest that they can hold that rate for in that leasing document. But we're at a period of time now that I could generate that.
Then wouldn't we want to know what's the deadline for, you gave us a deadline that we have to have an agreement with you to get the discounted price. What is that?
It's all gonna be tied to August 24th of 2023.
And it's July 10th.
Yes.
So then you're
I'm within a window of time that I can get you a market rate for a leasing contract that you could sign. I'm within that window that they could hold it.
So if you had that for us by the next meeting at July 17th,
Yes.
then you would have, the board could see a new updated contract. And what is included, I'm understanding that this is all, that there's no, that we were getting to the real cost of this proposal, and we increased it to 5.1 to cover the cost of a possible purchase or of the property near Rockford. That was the additional cost was in that, right?
No, the additional-
Yeah,
Whole project.
yeah, there was a whole project cost that it wasn't going to be there wasn't some magical $1 million that we were going to be holding and at some point.
It was about 400,000 in contingency, I think, 427 or something like that.
The project cost and pricing is all valid until August 24th of 2023. You and I are talking, the board and I are talking about the funding opportunities of leasing versus bonding. And I provided you examples of what it would be if you were to lease from Motorola the funding to support that project. It's the interest rate. I've given you examples at the current snapshot in time when I generated that would give you an indication of the percentage if you were to choose Motorola leasing for funding. I can lock that percentage in now that we're within a window or you've had this public hearing and you're ready to actually consider leasing. And I can get you that information if you are choosing or thinking about leasing this project versus bonding. And it's independent of the project. Motorola, our pricing doesn't change whether you use our leasing or you bond it. That is a separate item.
As long as it's determined by August 23rd.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. So, other considerations, because that's clearly now on the table. That option does that then completely eliminate the bonding at this time?
I would say it doesn't, because she's only talking that particular project, has nothing to do with land acquisition, it has nothing to do with contingencies. It has, and then to, as Gordy suggested, doing a lease for 2 years, how are you going to make the lease payments? There's no money to make the lease payments unless you bond.
Another possibility I'm thinking of. I'm weighing that, and the board should weigh that against, yeah. Now you understand this side of the table. I'm beginning to understand, I understand what you were saying, but you have to understand, to get to that point, you have to be sitting on this side and understand how we're gonna make those lease payments that we don't quite know because we don't know the term yet.
You have an example of the terms.
Understood.
You mean the 60% or the 25% of purpose, or are you talking about terms for leasing at 4.25 or whatever percent?
Correct. You have both options. If you were to bond it, the payment milestones regard for the project.
Yeah.
You also have an example, that gives you an interest rate example for 30, 40 days ago. And that is a payment a year from when you sign the lease, is when you're gonna have your first payment due on that 10-year lease. And you can pay it off early, no penalties to pay it off early.
So,
That is at, if it's at the 4.25%, none of our bonds came in at that high, or well, I think everything I've got that information from your past meeting that you looked at, 4.05, 3.9, 3.75, 3.6% for different rates on the bonds. So maybe Heidi can expand a little more. But, and also before passing it over to Heidi, when we get that bond, the bond proceeds, they go into a project fund, just like they did with the law enforcement center project. And that fund earns interest, like Heidi said. And I believe the treasurer is investing at fairly good rates right now, that we would be farther ahead to bond than to do a lease that has a higher rate than any of the bond issues have. And it would be paid for timely as well. Heidi, do you have anything?
In your packet today, and I have printed copies for you as well. Looking at a 15-year, I put a 25 basis point or 0.25% cushion based off market rates. We're looking at a 3.86% for a 15-year. For a 12-year, you're looking at a 3.72, and a 10-year at 3.65. For the interest rate. So typically the bond market does have a lower interest rate associated than a lease. Not always, but in this market, that is the case. And then with those, and if you go into the bonding process, you'll have the full pledge authority and taxing authority to make those payments. With the debt service levy, which use the full taxable value. Estimating that amount at 15 years, 42 cents, 49 cents for a 12, and 57 cents per thousand for a 10-year. So that's where the source of the payment would come back, is over that time period. In order to meet though that date of the August 24th, the county will have to start taking, and I have a calendar, I kind of plan to start talking about with this next resolution is the steps in order to hit that August 23rd date. You'll be starting to have that rating call, starting to incur some costs here in the next week or two. In order to go down that bonding process. I guess if we're looking at about 85% of the bonding costs are going to be spent here, my recommendation would be is to put it all into one bond to mitigate some of the cost of doing two bonds. And because we know that investing bond proceeds right now, those interest rates are very favorable. You know, if you were looking at maybe more of a 50-50 or a 20, you know, maybe we'd look at, you know, splitting them into the two bonds. But that's just, you know, my recommendation is since you have a large bulk of those expenditures, that'll be spent here fairly quickly, that 15% can be invested. And so that you'll be sitting in a good point financially down the road. I know there was a question, again, also on, you know, paying the bonds off. The bond market does have a 7-year call date where those payments are locked in. So that would be what you would levy each year. After that 7-year date, you can refinance the bonds if they're at lower interest rates, or you can pay them off early, should the county have cash on hand to pay them off. The reason that there's that 7-year call date in there is that investors want to have a guarantee on their investment, and that's how you get those interest rates on where they're at.
Well, I think I understand the point where we're at pretty clearly. My memory is, just one other thing you said you were gonna get into in when we considered the resolution that would probably, if that's the course of action we determine. Publication of notice hearings, if we don't make a decision today on this, we still have an opportunity before the August 23rd deadline to publish notice. For instance, if we delay any action, don't take any action today and take a look at what Motorola has and their proposal with their interest rates. And what that's gonna be and how much we're gonna pay for that lease, and what that's gonna come from. That's us. Where's that gonna come from? Okay, then is that timeline, can we still meet that timeline to meet the August 23rd deadline?
I'm gonna check back to you, Heidi, with the timeline. I know, so you have an agenda item now, and then there's agenda item next week to enter into that loan agreement.
See, we have to have another public hearing, right?
Well, not another public hearing, but in order to do the financing, there's a rating call that has to occur.
Right,
There's, I'll pass on these.
okay.
This as well, so you can look at the calendar that I have in place. There's a rating call. There is approval of an official statement, which is basically the prospectus document that is provided to potential investors. There's locking in the interest rates, and then having a form, put a legal form in front of you, and then closing and receiving the bond proceeds. So you have a document that looks like this.
Mhm.
Jump to page 3, calendar that looks like this. So you'll see that, you know, on June 26th, you set the date for the hearing that you had today.
Right.
After you've held this finance theory. After today, after you've held the finance theory hearing, you have the ability and the legal ability to borrow going forward. I have kind of starting in the next week to hold a rating call and approve that official statement document.
Mhm.
Receiving that rating back and then to get to that August 22nd date, I have a special meeting to lock in your interest rates on June 28th. And then,
July.
July 28th,
Yeah.
July 28th. Issuance resolution, which is basically putting everything you did prior to this into a legal form and approving and receiving the proceeds August 22nd.
So we're going to be August 21st, if we meet on Mondays.
I have that on the 2nd. It's not an official board meeting.
Oh.
You just have to have the staff in place to confirm that the wire has come into the county.
Okay.
I typically don't do them on board meetings because you're in a board meeting, and so that's why I have that August 22nd date. So you know, down this course of action from a bonding proceed, we have it pretty tight. This is a pretty tight timeline. There isn't a lot of wiggle room in order to, you know, get those proceeds earlier than that date. Now, whether, you know, whether Motorola is okay with knowing that your proceeds will be, you know, maybe a week or two late, you know, that would be the wiggle room. But
I believe on that part, I think, Sherry, you said that by the time you do the contract, we just need to have the contract signed by the 24th, August 24th, but you're probably not gonna bill that first bill until a month later or something like that.
Right, you will, an invoice will be generated once it gets into the Motorola system, and then you have 30 days to pay that invoice if you pay it on time.
so there's a little bit of wiggle room, but not a lot, if you want to move that August.
So
24th date.
specifically to my question, we don't have to conduct a set of time for another public hearing. It's kind of like a continuance for a little while.
But I do think there's something different going with a lease versus
Sure.
a debt.
Well, and I guess then it starts coming into the questions is how are you going to pay the other expenditures that are not included into the lease?
Right.
Then you're looking at alternate financing sources for smaller amounts, that you may need, you know, you have the authority to, but then you're kind of breaking up that financing. Whether you're borrowing internally from yourself or looking at a bank or bonding. It does seem apparent that there are other costs outside of the lease that will need to have decisions from the board.
So just a question for our Motorola representative. Since I don't have that, what we discussed, other than the fact that there may be some changes in interest rate, what were the payments on the lease? And what was the term of the lease that we discussed? You have those
I've got it,
documents?
Sherry, if you don't have
Thank
it.
you, I don't have.
Yeah,
So it's,
let's pull that up.
it's 25%. This was all been emailed to you in the past, but it's 25% of the contract price due upon contract execution, which you said a 30-day window to get it paid once it's signed.
This is if you were to bond. She's giving you the payment milestones on the project if you were to bond. I think he was asking if about the lease.
That's what I'd like to know.
Oh,
And the
lease
tool
side.
that
Yeah.
the tool that I provided gives you an example if you borrowed a certain dollar amount. So when she looks at that tool, it may be, if she looks at the top left corner, it's gonna say $4 million, here's what your annual payment would be. So it's not an exact number, because unless she puts the project total in there, that'll give you the exact number. Because it's just an estimated tool that I provided,
That's
using that interest rate that was identified.
On the total cost of the project.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we're gonna lease it for how many years was that?
10 years, actually, the tool that I sent gave 3, 5, 7, and 10, I believe.
So we better go to 10.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
And our leasing program through Motorola is to help government agencies be able to it's a funding alternative for being able to allow government to be able to solve their challenges for first responders. It's not to compete against the bond market. It really is an enablement to allow projects to move forward for various reasons throughout the country. So it's just another tool being put in front of you as an option for you to consider, but it by no means is meant to compete with the bonding solution. It's just an option.
Is that something we can put up on the screen and so we can all, so we look at that number?
I gotta find, I sent it to you guys. I think it's in my files.
Gloria, I believe I sent it to you on June the 7th. I can't remember off the top of my head, Mark. I believe it was right
That's
at
the one I have.
$500,000 year lease payment, like 499 and some change.
And that's the one I was reading from that you said wasn't the right. I was reading from the one from your email.
Oh, we're just kind of waiting to get a little more information about that possibility.
I have the tool in front of me. So at $4 million, and I can change that dollar amount up in this spreadsheet.
Okay, just stop right there.
Can you email it to me, Sherry?
What is the cost? The total cost to do the project?
There's two parts to it,
Right,
and I wanna clarify that.
yeah, no, I know, that's what I wanna know.
Motorola's project is 4.3 and some change. There is some incidentals not included in that. For instance, if we have to buy land at Rockford to put that tower on, Prairie Park doesn't work. We talked about Omnitel's cost of installing fiber, that was $15,000. There's $187,000 in pager costs, that's not included in Motorola's cost. So there is another $300,000 to $400,000 of incidentals that Dennis talked about that we're going to have to cover. So that's where originally we came up with a 4.75 number, 4.9.
And there was contingency was what?
Well, this is a contingency.
Yeah, that's a contingency, that we know we're gonna have 300,000 to 400,000. 911 board came to a number of 4.9 is what we asked the board originally, and you went to 5.1 to make sure there is plenty of incidental. We know there's at least give or take $300,000 in incidental cost if we have to purchase that land, because we have to cover the cost of the pagers. We have to, Omnitel fiber hookup was $15,000, and we are not 100% sure we can use the Fossil Prairie Park. We may have to relocate that Rockford Tower, give or take a half a mile, one way or the other from the Prairie Park to make that work, and that may include buying some land for that tower.
So Motorola's firm proposal was 4.1, didn't consider these other numbers just mentioned by them.
Right.
Okay,
That's fine.
so we got two things now. We got a lease payment, plus we gotta figure out how this is gonna happen as well. So what's that annual lease payment on a 10-year basis? Yeah.
I can't open it in there, sure, I'm sorry.
So on a total of $4 million, it's
Can you
four.
email it to me, then I can.
I don't have your
email
email address.
G Carr, GCARR at Floyd COIA.org. Then they can open it up on their laptops and look at it.
That, with what? CO.
Floydco.ia.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's Floyd
Floyd
Co.
COIA.org. Yeah, that's the one that's the same one, that's what I forwarded. That, I think I have it.
It's an Excel spreadsheet.
It's a spreadsheet, not a multi-page lease agreement.
Right, what I just sent you, what I just emailed you is an Excel spreadsheet that is, gives you the ability to change that $4 million to whatever number we want, and then it gives you, it populates the annual payment amount based on the dollar amount and interest rate that they gave me back then.
The total price for Motorola Mark was $4,349,782.
Got that.
So if you put it in that formula she just sent to Gloria, and we'll tell you the annual lease payment at the interest rate level was 30 days ago when she gave it to you.
So let's do that.
I can't open their spreadsheet, but I can give her the number if she has it in front of her.
Or you could send it to Floyd BOS at floydcoa.org also. But if it's the same thing you did, I'll just resend what I sent to the board.
I mean, I have it, but I can't change the full number.
Okay.
And you can,
I don't know if you guys have got mine, oh, my emails from
We've
before.
been,
They just sent it, resent it.
not yet. Maybe.
No, I'm refreshing.
There we go.
There it is.
Now, that's not the spreadsheet you're talking about, I don't have the spreadsheet.
Yeah, we-
I have the multiple page, lease,
That's the 4.349.
But it's really the spreadsheet that they're asking.
yeah, that hasn't come through yet. I think if it's just a spreadsheet, that wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
It don't open. Click and click and none of that matters.
Has to do with that. That's-
When I had it, I
Put it with a hammer.
actually had to go to the IT director to get it approved.
Okay.
Well, I've got the same thing. It's not.
Because it's blocking it for some reason.
Yeah, this is Word, I can't.
Well, I've got the Word document open up, but then we're really more interested right now in the spreadsheet.
Right, the Word document's just gonna be the
Yeah.
example lease contract language. It's not gonna include this tool that gives you specifics.
We got
To
that,
your
it's on the
overview.
spreadsheet. That's what we're-
Okay, let's do it this way. We're financing the Motorola for the total cost of your part of the project, $4.349 million over a period of 10 years. At an interest rate of, how much, a year ago?
It was 30 days ago, it was 4.27.
Okay. Equal payments, right?
Yeah.
Over a period of 10 years.
$500,000 a year.
I'm not gonna deal in ballpark figures on something this important, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good estimate,
We're about 5.25.
525,000. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about that option then for a while. Because the reason we're talking about it is because some people believe that's a good option for the county because it would allow us the opportunity to get the project started. In a couple, 3 years down the road, we could determine if that's the total cost of the project, and then we could bond for it later. Is that the idea that I'm hearing? That's what I thought. So then we've got a $525,000 annual payment during those couple of 3 years. And then we're gonna go out to the bond market and we're gonna consider the unknowns, which are interest rates. Who knows?
Attorney fees, money fees, all the
That.
costs associated with that.
Is that really a good option? From this side of the desk, where do we come up with $525,000 for those 3 years? That's, in my opinion, is the question we have to answer now. If the project's gonna go forward or not, where are we gonna come up with $525,000 for a couple, 3 years? I'd like the board to think about that before we take any questions just a moment. Yes.
About 6 weeks ago, I called Carroll County 911 and Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong. They went through a similar project like this 2 or 3 years ago. Their project was about $4 million. I think they didn't have to build any towers. They ended up buying one, I think, that was already in existence. But they did lease for 2 years, am I correct?
I don't know the specifics, but they
Sure,
did lease.
but they did lease for 1 or 2 years before they did a bond issue. But I'm not saying that's the correct thing for us to do because interest rates may have been different at that time than they are now. And they didn't have a law enforcement center burden on their back like we do to pay for too. So, I just wanted to bring that up. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. What we need to do is what's best financially for the county and what we can afford. We need to do this. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But we need to do it correctly and what's in the best financial interest for the county. So.
Mark. Okay, I'm just, so I'm just trying to get the full picture. That gives us the $4.3 million, doesn't give us the financing for anything else, for any of that other stuff, to get up the tower, all that stuff. So that's gotta come in too. So that 525 becomes more. If we're gonna do a project, it's more than that. It's more than 525. I mean, that's just the Motorola portion of it. But what you're saying? Yeah. I mean, that's literally the way it is. So then that becomes another cost on top of that annual 525 cost. I mean, you just don't, it's gotta come from somewhere. I'm beginning to question how we do this if we don't bond for it at this time. To me, it's just starting to think that this option of the lease isn't in the best financial option of the county. But we're going to complete the project. We're not doing it just. Yeah. So why would this thing that we're considering be less costly to us? How is it? In fact, I was Brian first.
Let me muddy the water a little more here, okay? Motorola's lease is a zero down lease. So when you sign, the first payment is due in 12 months. Okay? So in the first 12 months, 60% of the project, would that be pretty close? Sherry, would be complete?
Can't put a percentage on it, but there'll be aspects of the project like we discussed that was complete.
So in that first year, with the signage of the lease, you have no down payment. You would have, of course, the overrun cost to handle. But that would also allow you to get well into the project to look at a bonding number that you could bond for, and then there is no penalty for complete payout of the lease. So when the first lease payment is due, you could pay the whole $4.3 million for the bond. What I'm saying is the lease option would buy you without cost other than the land and pager and the fiber optics would buy you 12 months of project toward final dollar amount to make your bond a tighter bond because you would be far enough into the project to see what is a reasonable number. You know, right now we're projecting numbers, which I mean, that's what we have to do. But that's where I see the advantage in the lease option is it buys you 12 months of 4.3 free to get to a tighter number. But you still have to figure out how to fund the overage, that part of it. Did I make that?
I understand.
You understand what
So
I'm
the
saying?
overage could be as much as what?
300 or 400.
300,000 or 400,000.
And that's approved in that 12-month period.
And
The
can
first
you
12 months.
reimburse funds, a county fund from a bond? If they spend out of a county dollars, can they reimburse themselves then when they do the bond?
There are some, so these bonds are based off of a bank qualified, statute. So, if you're going to be reimbursing, you do have to have a reimbursement resolution in place in order to reimburse yourself with, the funds. So you can do that. You know, the other thing to take into account is even if you don't have a payment due, I would assume that interest would accrue at the, 4.25%. So there is a cost to finding out that. There's a cost to finding out exactly what that number is. And then
back to the risks, I said, of putting it into two bonds is we don't know where the interest rate will be in a year. And we don't know what reinvestment fee, what you'll be losing out on reinvestment fees because you'll be timing it up to the point of exactly spending those dollars. So there is, I wouldn't say that there, every option has, a little bit of risk. If interest rates drop all the way down to the historicals they were 2 years ago, it would have been best to wait. If they go up, it makes sense to do it right now, but, when boards are making decisions, you're making decisions with, based off of what you know now, and trying to mitigate those, those costs. And so I think today, you've heard a lot of information on the lease, on the bonding. The bonding option does get everything up front. And with the opportunity to make some money on those dollars, the leasing option does have some costs up front. You do have to find out some financing options for the other approximate $1 million worth of expenditures. And then have that, where the market is about, a year from now. So, and that's really kind of what you're considering today is, which option is really the best, for the taxpayers.
Mark?
Yes, yeah, go
So
ahead.
while we've been sitting here, I did the math on this, because I'm with you, we gotta figure the numbers out. And, if we do 5.1 million on a bond at 3.65, that's the average. Total interest is $994,912.26. If we do the lease, which does not include the extras, we gotta talk about where that money comes from. The interest on the lease is actually $3,000 more money on the same term, 10 years. And we have to come up with all the pages and stuff. So we're talking $400,000 to $500,000 difference if we lease over the bond. And believe me, I'm with the rest of these guys, I don't want to put any more on the taxpayers, but if we're talking 10 years of paying for this, the bond is by far the most financial gain for us. And that's not figuring any interest we may accrue while the project's going on. So I really think the bond, and I'm listening to everybody, and when we walked in here, I was on the same page as them, we shouldn't bond for it, but after hearing from everybody and doing these numbers here, and Heidi can check my numbers, but I bet I'm pretty close, that we're probably $400,000 or $500,000 cheaper to go with the bond today than if we wait, if the bond rate goes up. Say we wait until April even, if 6 months from now that bond rate goes up, that gap's gonna narrow quite a significant amount. So.
Thank you.
I mean, that's, ask her, but I bet I'm pretty close, $400,000 to $500,000 cheaper to bond today than it is to lease it. And Motorola provides that as a tool to help counties who have to get up through some hurdles. I don't think we're at that point. I think we're at the point of the three of you building part of the project that's gonna go forward, which is the best way to finance it, my opinion, after
So then
discussion, writing the numbers down.
did that computation figure out the initial interest here in that yearly payment of 4.25% on 4.49?
The numbers I compared was 4.25 on their 4.3 million project cost. I did not take into consideration any of the pagers and the stuff we're gonna have to pay. And I compared that to the 5.1 that we're going to bond for the whole thing. So it's still cheaper to bond even if we're borrowing another $750,000 more.
You accounted for 10 years.
And that was 10 years, 10 years to 10
It
years, so.
You did look at that first year, it was 10 years.
Yeah, so the bond is still by far, in the total project, we're gonna be $500,000 or more, depending on what interest rates do. We don't know. 6 months from now, she might say it's 4.65 instead of 3.65.
And, the interest rates I'm giving you today is based off of where they're at today. Really, when you'd be locking in that interest rate based off that calendar, so, we still have a couple weeks of, market, before you lock in that rate. But it does have some cushion in it right now. So, hoping that the interest rates stay stable, that, the county would come in, a little better than what I presented with you today.
So even if let's just, one last time.
Even if
we
it's
thought
not.
the idea of the lease. There's about $178,000 of interest that would be due for that 12-month holding period. Well, we'll see what the final cost of the project is. That's another $178,000. But, it's not gonna be any different up here in a year, in one regard.
So I don't, I
And
believe,
we still have to come up with the money in a year from now to start those lease payments. I'm just trying to say, try to sit on this side of the discussion. If you really knew how tight our budgets are and the unknown things that we're dealing with in the next year regarding property taxes and reductions from the state government, you'd understand why that is better than this, what you came up with the first, Gordy, because that is risk, more risk to the county, in my belief. I think Ben and others agree to that now.
But that bond still got to be paid too.
We understand that.
You still got to come up with $500,000 a year.
Yeah, we understand that.
Oh, yeah.
That's what the project costs. There's nothing comes free.
And that would be a debt service levy.
Right, and that's the debt service levy.
That's what you'd be locking in the process.
So you feel a little differently about it after hearing this discussion, because you were pretty serious about that, and a couple of times today, and you know, and we understand the city coalition for county government, but we don't understand the facts that are out there, because I think a lot of people in this room have had a little change of opinion regarding that, as to how it was earlier addressed. That's all I'm saying.
The project has got to move forward. The lady on the end down there has got questions. I think she needs time to talk.
Well, I'm not asking you, because you addressed the board twice about, you know, being fiscally responsible
Yeah.
and how this could end up being like the old courthouse. And I'm thinking after this pretty thorough discussion, there doesn't seem to be a lot of reason to wait for another week to hear more about their bonding because of what we've learned in the meantime. And I'm just asking you, is that how you agree, look at the situation?
It's got to be done. So, yep, I'm happy. We'll move forward.
Okay. I appreciate that because that's what public hearings are for. This has been one of the more interesting ones I've been involved in. Appreciate your comments and we openly discuss this and kind of come to what I think is, I'm pretty comfortable with. I'm just one of the members of the board. Jennifer, if you want to talk, we'll recognize you.
I'm just gonna say that, yeah, we need to get it, we need to get this, and this is a must, because it's lights. It is, it's lights, if you guys actually sit down and think about it, it's lights, if they can't hear it on the radios. Yeah, it's, you know, it's a life and death situation, so it needs to be done, it needs to, whether it's a bond, whether it's the financing, which, the leasing, I don't agree with the leasing, I do agree with the bond. I think we need to get that.
All
That's
right.
what that's what the 911 board, I think, service and advisory boards are thinking of more of the bond when we spoke.
All right, thank you. Board members. You've heard all the session. Where would you like to be on this? What are your thoughts?
Well, one question I had right away, where Bogie mentioned his first statements, I think Brian Chambers mentioned that you were pretty tight at 5.1 million, you're pretty responsible that way. And Gordy's talking 3, I don't know where the other 2 comes from, but I think the bonding is the way to go. So then kind of laid it out there.
and believe me, when I walked in here, I was on the same page as them, but after sitting here and talking rates, I mean, I really think for 10 years, if we can lock it in now, we're talking $500,000, I think the bond's the only fiscal way to go.
Mhm. That's all I got.
Supervisor Kiefer, you have any?
Yeah, I've changed my mind some too. I thought maybe a lease for a year or 2 might have been the way to go, but I'm convinced that that's probably not the best thing for this county right now. It may have worked in other areas, but we have to do what's right for us, and I think bonding is the way to go.
All right, This time I'll, take a motion to close the hearing.
No, you already did declare the hearing closed.
The hearing's closed, but
Yeah.
we don't have to take further action before we consider the next resolution.
Correct.
All right. Thank you for the discussion. Next item, item 11, review and action resolution 2723, taking additional action on proposal to enter into a general obligation emergency communications loan agreement. All right.
So this does set, declares next Monday, we could good to go next Monday.
So for the 17th, your bond council will send a resolution to approve that official statement document. That official statement document should be coming in the next day or two for the board to approve that document that will be sent out to potential investors. You know, since the board has taken that direction and moving forward with the bonding, I would like to talk a little bit about the term we have talked about, you know, the 10-year term, which I provided in this packet, basically 3 different term options. The things to think about with the term is, one is you like to pay it off as soon as possible. However, you know, the county board has to take into account is that you're making those payments, that's putting a tax impact on each, you know, on that debt service levy. So I do have on your left side 3 different pages that have a 10, a 15, and a 12-year option to pay those off. The other thing to take into account is when we're looking at some of this equipment that you're bonding for, probably looking at, you know, a 15-year lifespan is probably not, you're probably getting very close to or above that lifespan. So that's where I push at the 10 up to a 15, and then also give you a 12-year option to take a look at. So we don't want to have those bond payments exceed the lifespan of some of that equipment, you know, more than what extends that lifespan of the equipment. So if you have that first page, I've shuffled them around, but it'll say preliminary bank qualified rates as of June 16th plus 0.25%. And then there's a 10, I'll go ahead and look at this 10-year option with you and go through each page. So the sources of the funds, so that's looking at bonding for $5,045,000, depositing into the construction fund, $4,950,000. Below there are the costs of the financing, legals, and the S&P rating. Bonds are issued in $5,000 increments, so there is a rounding amount to get you up to a $5,000 amount. That also can go back into the construction fund. So that's how I have that structured right now, is that 4.95. Is that's a accurate number for that estimate. That was that 4.95.
That's what she looked at originally.
Yeah, that is correct. Perfect. The page after that has a debt service schedule. I do have for each of these options, I have an interest-only payment for the first year, because the budgeting session has already concluded for fiscal year 2024, so we want a lower payment in that first year. And then you'll see those even payments. Down below, you'll see it.
Yeah, just on that, so when you're looking at that first interest payment, what you're saying is that we would be able to use those bond proceeds. There's gonna be a margin of cushion there that we're gonna be able to make those payments with the proceeds that we receive, the cost.
That's a very good question. So I can take the bond up to 5.1 in order to mitigate that interest payment, so you can pay with bond proceeds for that first payment. There may be a small gap that you may need to use general fund proceeds for that first year payment, but since we did have that cushion up to the 5.1, I would lean towards getting you up to that 5.1, because we do know budgets are tight. to help you with that first interest payment, since that budget, budgets have been set for fiscal year 2024, you cannot impose the debt service levy for the June 1st payment. Does that all make sense from that standpoint? Perfect. And then the third page, basically shows, on that far right side, that shows 56, 57 cents. That's a tax rate per thousand that will go for each fiscal year. So if you're looking at the 56, the 56, 57 cents for the 10-year, the difference, for the 12-year is, the payment is, 49 cents per thousand. And that interest rate is 3.72%. So interest rates are pretty flat right now, the longer you go out. And then up to that 15-year.
But you're paying $240,000 more in interest.
You're paying more interest over, the longer time, but you're lowering that tax impact. Yeah, you're lowering that tax impact, so you'll be paying it for longer. The other thing I'll note is with with the 10-year, you'll have 3 years remaining to pay off early or refinance. With the 12 or 15, it's much more likely that you can refinance and save the taxpayers on the longer end of it than, if it's shorter. At a 10-year, you're probably looking at, if you have some cash on hand, you can pay it off early, but usually the likelihood of having cash on hand is, unless we find ourselves with millions of ARPA dollars 10 years down the road, which I will note, ARPA dollars are, the one thing that ARPA dollars have, are restricted to is for debt payments, but there are things that, so I guess what I wanted to put in front of the board today is just to see a feeler of, how does the board feel about the 10, the 12, or the 15-year payment?
Then 10 would have a 7-year call also.
Yes.
But you probably wouldn't, I don't know that you would refinance. You just see what your rates were really low, would you refinance, or
It just depends on where interest rates are at, and if, I don't recommend a refinancing unless it has a net savings, the cost associated with refinancing. So it just depends on where you're at. And just saying the likelihood of a 10-year being refinanced versus a 12 or a 15 is less than.
All right, thanks. That's a,
Have a, if there's a feeling or a direction that, and I'll be putting that structure into that official statement document that'll be on the, on the document next week. If there's any discussion or a decision that wants to be made officially, we'll probably be looking at making that decision, next week as you approve that official statement. But today, really just looking for, a direction or a discussion on what you're feeling for a term.
can I just say something? It's interesting to think how, we're looking at these at a 56-cent levy rate. And I'm just thinking of like the city of Charles City people and Charles City School District people who may be looking at a bond of 28.5 million in the city with a pool bond and an impact on their taxes for those levy rates as well. But we don't know we don't know anything now because those are valid issues in November.
well, just kind of based on some of the comments we've heard about the length and lifetime of the equipment, I kind of think 15 is probably a little long.
Yeah.
10 or 12.
That's what I was
What do you
gonna
guys
ask,
think?
Sherry, 10 years, will we doing this again? Or,
Not to the same extent. Not to the same extent,
Okay.
but your radio lifespan, I mean, their workhorses, majority of them will still be working, they'll work. But you are stretching lifespan of some of, especially the radios. I mean, if I went to the marketplace to try to lease radios only, they'll only go 7 years. But because you are putting infrastructure in with the radios, they can offer 10. But she can offer 12, so.
Yeah, I prefer 10 over 12 and 15, but as long as the back of the rest of it.
Yeah, I
fits
just wanted,
together.
yeah, I just wanted you to consider that, you know, the tax rate that's associated with the 10 and give you 12 to consider. That 15 is really kind of the outlier. It's really between the 10 and the 12 would be my recommendation. I would be very comfortable with either of those options.
All right. We just kind of indication that nothing committed to until another time. 10 or 12.
Yeah.
Coming.
Well, for purposes of the next document, I'll put the 12
Yeah.
on there and then we'll discuss that next, that next week.
Make this your approval, so put the 12 down and then
Sure.
discuss it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
All right. Okay, we still have our resolution in front of us. Resolution 2723, let's see. Yes, I read that earlier. There's further comment on the resolution. Well, we don't have a motion and a second to it yet. So I guess that's first order of business. Is there a motion to approve, resolution number 27-23?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 27-23, resolution taking additional action on proposal to enter into a general obligation emergency communication loan agreement.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Supervisor Keeper and seconded by Jorgensen to approve resolution 27-23. There any comment from anyone in attendance? Any comment from anyone listening online? Further comments from the board? Auditor will call the roll.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Jorgensen,
Aye.
Hewens.
Aye. Resolution 27-23 has been approved. Thank you very much. Item 12, first reading of resolution 28-23, declaring emergency medical services to be an essential service. That resolution is also in the packet on what, there it is, right there. This would be declaring emergency medical services to be an essential county services authorized by the code. And we know what this process is setting off. Once this is declared, there's a couple readings. This would be the first one. At that point in time, designated committees will meet, getting back with a proposal for future consideration. And then this would be, if it's passed, a ballot issue. It would be put on the ballot for the earliest of the.
That is, you can do this declaration process anytime. It doesn't mean you have to
That's
put it
right.
on a ballot issue.
Correct. It can get approved and just stand there and not get addressed later. Thank you. There any questions? We're taking the first read, so is there any comment from the public regarding this resolution declaring emergency medical services an essential service? Certainly something we've talked about a great deal. We all know the costs that we're bearing now to provide the services, the essential it is. I mean, is there any more essential service that maybe the one that's before it, but this is also very essential too. I mean, emergency services for ambulances, to our county residents is an essential service that we're committed to provide. Right now, it's gonna cost us additional $215,000.
$207,500.
275. Thank you. Than before. But this sets in motion, if it's approved and put on a ballot for another tax levy possibility to provide those services. Further discussion. Any comment from anyone here? Comments from anyone listening on the phone? Is there a motion to approve resolution 28-23 declaring emergency?
First reading of the resolution.
The first reading of the resolution.
It'll be on the next Monday's meeting and the following Monday's meeting.
Or maybe,
Maybe, when it,
Right.
yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Right,
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 28-23, resolution declaring emergency medical services to be an essential service.
A second.
all right, it's been moved by Supervisor Jorgensen, seconded by Kiefer to approve resolution 28-23.
You're technically not approving the
Of
resolution
course.
yet, just the first reading.
The first reading of the resolution. If we weren't going to have more than one reading, we'd have to state that this was the first and only reading of the resolution. Typically, that's something I've never done because I like to have a couple readings because, you know,
The exception to
because,
this,
yeah.
this one requires 3 readings. You
Okay.
can't wait readings.
Excellent,
We did one in the
excellent.
It's different. Never seen one like this until last year, we went through the process.
We're gonna have 3 here, 3 readings,
Yeah.
all good. Auditor Carr, call the roll.
Okay, Jorgensen,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
The first reading of resolution 28-23 has been approved. All right. Thank you. All right, item 13. This is an item that was added to our agenda a little bit after the normal time, and there's reasons for that. We received communications from the city of Charles City. I think the date was July, what was the date, or something like that. They needed to have a letter of support prior to
next Monday.
next
And
Monday.
The application is due next Monday, so I think I want to get it going here.
And so they indicated if the supervisors would show a support for their application for thriving communities grant application. And in your packet, we have that.
That is the second email that
Okay,
was added later.
right. Okay,
So it, at first I just had a letter and what was in your first packet, and then Steve Deers emailed me on Saturday and said that a letter would get points, they'd get some points for that, but a resolution showing that the supervisors are what they are doing for economic development. So I included the resolution you approved a couple weeks ago, and then enhanced the letter more with how you are spending money in fiscal year 24, and how you spent money in the past for housing needs.
Mhm.
So the letter is beefed up a little bit.
so the letting discusses the housing shortage is a deterrent to draw new and expanding commercial and industrial markets to our area. And that we are wholeheartedly in support of the project. Excuse me. Any questions from members of the board?
Does this have to do with the housing authority commission? Is it linked to it somehow?
All I know is they can work, they can get funding that would cover costs for someone who's willing to build. So I don't know that it's gonna fall under
Okay,
housing authority. I don't know the answer to that for sure.
okay,
But I would think that since it's a developer, that maybe it might not be
doesn't sound
under
like,
housing authority.
okay. That's the only question I had, I guess.
I don't have any questions.
Is there a motion to approve the letter of support to the city of Chelsea's thriving communities grant application?
I'll make a motion to approve the letter of support. City of Charles City and then, housing. Thriving Communities Grant application.
Is there a second?
Oh, I'll second that. I'm sorry.
It's been moved by Supervisor Ferguson, second by Keeper, to approve the letter of support to the city of Chelsea's thriving communities grant application. Any comment from anyone listening on the phone? In person? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Motion is carried. Hope they get their approval. It's certainly needed. Item 14, review action regarding resolution 29,
You haven't done number 9.
vacation
Yeah.
accrual.
You have missed one, number 9.
We missed one, Mark. Go back up to number 9.
Okay, you can do that.
We jumped to the public hearing.
Certainly. Yeah, that's correct. We'll do that this time. That is the issue regarding the utility. It's very important, the drainage utility resolution procedure. We talked about it at a couple of board meetings. Establishing a procedure for utility crossings throughout our drainage districts of the county. And we considered proposals. It's a general proposal by the Iowa Drainage District Association that was drafted. And many counties have adopted a similar one to that. Now we have two groups. The ISG has put a proposal in front of us as Bolton Mink to review the resolution that we'd be adopting. And in addition, we have a proposal from who we've had as our drainage engineer in the past, Robert Goodwin, thank you, from Bob's law firm for his services in review of that resolution. Having given that as a little preamble, let's look at the ISG proposal. This is one we've seen before. It's in your packet. ISG is proposing to provide the scope of the work described for a compensation of $3,500, including travel, mileage, printing are included. Their deliverables are they were going to have two, what was it? Deliver a final document outlining the utility easement requirement for all of Floyd County Drainage District, and up to 2 review meetings with board of supervisors and other stakeholders as needed. $3,500 includes their travel, mileage, and printing. Okay, any questions on that one? That's one we looked at before. Then we'll go to Bolton Mink. They give us a resolution. This is just, okay. They gave us a format that they used in Hancock, right? Yes, that they used in, they've done the same thing with their Hancock County. This was just their example of what they used. And then they have their format for doing it. So 10 pages long. And there's their resolution. there's also some fill in the blanks part to that. They suggest in their resolution a crossing fee of $1,000 for each crossing. That's totally up to the board, doesn't really pertain to which company provides us with the resolution, that's our determination to set that. So where does it get down to? I'm seeing 13 pages of that. And they have an application form that they use for any utility that wants to cross. Where, I don't see, where is their proposal? What kind of fee are they proposing to charge for this other?
So his email just says, had those attachments that you just referenced. This includes the formal application page, procedures and conditions, and a formal resolution page. Please feel free to utilize, change, adapt, or include anything from these documents. Please let me know if you have any questions, or if I could assist further. So there, if you, the way when I look at these, I think what's happening is, they're coming up with procedures here. And then anytime you have an application, you do this resolution for every applicant, the way I read it. And this one looks like it's from ISG, looks like it's a resolution that you do with every application. Because this is filling in the blank. The ISG one is filling in the blank of the applicant and how to reach them and that type of thing. And so, yeah, the fees you could set with either one. Just the way I read it, it just like the differences with Bolton and Mink. This is a procedure that you fill in the blanks for your fees. But this is the procedure. And then whenever you have that applicant, you would do this resolution. So, and the difference then, the ISG one looks like every application, you do the 16-page or how many page resolution.
Yeah, I understand that. So with Bolton,
So they,
what Bolton, the bottom line, what's Bolton and make charging for those
this is
services?
yours at no charge. And
There's a charge somewhere. I don't believe in free. They can hire you, when we get their billing statements, they're very vague, and they can charge us for that through the drainage district, and charge the producers, the landowners.
well, there's no contract for them to, like ISG is saying,
Yeah, we need to have a contract.
they're not charging.
Okay, well, they will, we'll be paying. Well, nothing is free. I don't believe that
But I
it's
think
free.
what this is saying is you just need to fill in blank what your fees are. So that's the difference. This one, you're hiring
know
ISG to figure out, to help you figure out what your fees are. There's a lot of cross-reference, exact same verbiage. I don't know if you've compared the two, but most sections are, they cross over with the same language because ISG or Bolton and Mink neither created the information. And so your ISG is saying, we will help you establish what fees are right for Floyd County. Bolton Mink is saying, if you like this model, you can use this model at no charge, and you establish your fees and you put your fees in here. So you're not asking them to do anything. They're saying, here's this resolution that's a model, basically, their model's the same. It's just what fees you're going to put in for it. So that's why they're not charging, because if you say, well, we want you to help us figure out what fees we should use, then I'm sure they would say there's a charge. But if you were to talk with other counties and say what fees seem right for you, or if it's just fill in the blank with fees if you like this model. and they don't need to be a part of it, or if you want to consult with them on, should we charge $1,000, should we charge whatever? They probably would charge you if you want them to help fill in the blanks. Do you need somebody to help you fill in the blanks or not? Or is it something between what you can gather from other counties and working with Bob Goodwin, that you're just paying Bob Goodwin?
That was my next question. Where does Bob Goodwin come into the picture and why?
Where's his letter?
ISG never mentioned
That's
Bob
in the
Goodwin.
first packet. His
Okay,
letter in the
first one.
packet,
All right.
yeah.
We'll look at that. At the end of the packet first, okay?
His is on page 25.
Okay.
So,
Yes, yeah, you all received that in the mail, so I don't have to check the mail.
Yeah, okay, good. That's it.
he can't keep it, so.
Not- This one says, he is, Robert Goodwin, who was here when we had the DD3 meeting, and we discussed this particular item at that time too. He is saying that he'll bill his time at the rate of $230 per hour, not to exceed a total of $3,000 for review and input. So it's kind of up to the board how much we want his input in this process. If we want it at all. You know,
And then I think part of the discussion should probably be, how do you pay for it?
right, yeah, and what fund does it come out of, rural service fund, general fund, ARPA fund?
Drainage district.
Right, and because, this is county-wide drainage districts, it's not like one drainage district, it's all,
Which would be,
yeah, that'd be hard to do.
that'd be hard.
And just funding just for the drainage district, maybe look, think of all the parcels, you'd have to piece that out too.
I can't imagine.
I
how you
don't
could
think
do that.
that's, I don't think that's appropriate.
I think that's correct.
And I know you've talked about general fund and rural services, and part of it as a general fund, it's not a benefit to most people, most of the taxpayers. However, we do have a couple of drainage districts, such as Drainage District 656 with Cerro Gordo County, that has corporate limits in it. And there's one in town here that has corporate limits in it. And we have Western School Watershed that has some corporate limits to it. And so my thoughts would be that you would probably use general fund or ARPA rather than drainage or rural services.
General just seems like a better source to me. I don't know. There's a lot of difference, but
So it kind of depends on who you pick. You're talking about $50,000 or zero. I mean, if you choose Bolton Inc., they're not charging a fee.
They will though.
They'll get their money
They'll
somehow.
get their money, but they'll charge you more than what the other guys charge.
Then I think that's what you need to talk them to. If you're asking them to consult with what dollar amounts to put in this procedure, then you do need to have a service with them. But what they're offering is, here's the document, you put in all those blanks that are in there, you fill in what you want your fee to be,
it'd still be zero.
and it's $0. Because you're not consulting them. And it's, or $3,500, up to $3,500 for ISG. If you want them to fill in the blanks.
plus Goodwin's fees if we engage him.
$230 an hour, not to exceed 3,000, but he's on top of, I mean, I do think it's probably good to have someone with that drainage knowledge to prepare your procedure or your resolution, whichever way you decide to go. But, I mean, we will often have a legal counsel review procedures and resolutions, and this is pretty big one that I think Bob's is a valid one to pay. I just don't know about the other two. And part of me is like, well, it's just fill in the blanks and you work with, see what other counties have done. Why would you spend up to 3,500 for ISG?
I guess, Dennis, I'm not sure how how would you perceive, how do you think they're gonna charge us when we fill blanks and we don't even tell them what we did? You know, we just use the document and go forward. Maybe have Goodwin, validate what we fill the blanks in. How would Bolton still zing us in the back door, so to speak?
Well, my concern, and I brought this up before in the past, is Bolton Mink's billing statements are very vague.
They changed them at your request though. They put more in the last statements that you've got. I don't know if any of you looked at them.
I think I've seen one since then. But I just have doubts when someone say there's no charge. You know, they're not in the business for not charging people. But to answer your question, I can't answer your question, Jim, because I don't know. You know, that we're still working with them on a drainage district 3, and we're not done paying them yet. And, you know, this is gonna sound kind of maybe being the devil's advocate, I guess, but I don't know that I could trust Bolton Mink not to add some hidden charges in the districts to cover that. But
If you ask them for how to fill in the blanks, then you wouldn't be paying them for this. They are not going to put expenses not related to it. It'd be illegal for them to put expenses that are not associated with the drainage district in the drainage district 3.
so is Bolton Mink, they're not one of the candidates to do the pipeline check. Like,
Pipeline inspector,
yeah, like,
not anyone that we've interviewed yet today.
yeah, ISG is one, and there was the second one, I can't.
Yeah.
Bolton and Mink had talked to the previous board. They have no interest in doing the entire county. They're only interested in doing pipeline inspections in the drainage district area. And so they don't even want the rest of the pipeline work. And so for that, when you have those inspections, probably ISG might be your, or whoever you've interviewed might be options, but Bolton Mink doesn't even want the rest of that.
But Bolton Mink come out of nowhere. They weren't part of this discussion prior to that meeting we had. We interviewed ISG. Spencer was the first person to come and made a presentation to us, right?
For inspection.
For the drainage district.
Yes.
And then after a meeting we had back in June, all of a sudden Bolton Mink says, well, we'll do it for you, but it doesn't cost anything.
No. They didn't say, we'll do it for you. They say, we already have done this. You can have this because this has already been done. If you've looked at the model that the Drainage District Association put together, can you compare these two?
I looked at them both, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So neither of them really,
They're not that different.
no. They might have their own little twist to them. But ISG is just taking that information from the Drainage District Association as well.
Yep. Merlin, you have something you'd like to add? Merlin Schweitzer.
You've already chose the GSI to do the pipeline for the county,
No, we have not.
but they've interviewed for it.
They have.
So-
Wait, by the way, that when we started to discuss with Spencer, it was real clear this is separate from your discussion and your consideration as a county pipeline inspector. They are not related. And that I made that really clear at the time too, because, that's, we have yet to do. But if we went with them, that doesn't mean they have an inroad or anything regarding this at all.
But if you pick them, then they would do the drainage districts all too, correct? If you pick them to do the pipeline.
Not for, they're separate.
If
One's
they, well,
inspections, one's.
yeah, they're offering this service for $3,500, for the utility. You know, the selection of the county inspector is paid by the pipelines. And, you know, that's how that works.
And that's not what this is.
Yeah, that's a
But
separate.
And then-
you wanted to hire the same person to do both, and that $3,500 is only if you use all his services.
You're gonna
No,
pay whatever the app, if you want to implement this, if you hire, if this has in here that you would hire a drainage engineer to look at any applications, you're gonna pay them for that.
So
to
you're
look
gonna
at
have to pay
that.
whoever you do it anyway, because you're gonna do it right, because you're gonna either hire a lawyer or you're gonna hire somebody else. So you just won't pay that $3,500 to be done with it.
But they're saying 3,500 plus the attorney. They're not saying they wanna do this without an attorney.
Kelly, you know, all good questions, all kind of go around the same type of thing, pipelines and drainage districts and that. I would say this, County Attorney Pritchard did not have the experience or knowledge that Bob Goodwin does on drainage district. And I think he would tell you that. In my opinion, it's a little different field, and I do think on a limited amount, $230 an hour, you can ask them 2 questions. I mean, you can't get billed $3,000 if you ask just a couple specific questions. He is involved as a representative of someone who is petitioning to intervene. He's very knowledgeable about the pipeline part of it, which to me is a plus. When I see this, it kind of comes down to, okay, a couple of things. One that we talked about, what's it gonna cost across all these individual drainage districts. You know, he raised one question that he saw in here that goes to the county engineer that talks about, are you gonna do open cuts or gonna bore? One of these languages gives you the option in consultation with the engineer, not this one, but the project engineer for the district. And then the other one, the one I raised is the big one to me, is liability issue. And I want an attorney who's knowledgeable about this, because I believe the way this is written could leave the possibility that the boards that act as the trustees of all of our drainage districts could be held liable in the case of a release of carbon dioxide. That is a big concern to me, and that's one I think Mr. Goodwin could help us with. So I think Brian would be pretty well spent in getting that, his review of that. And it is timely, I mean, goodness sake. August 22nd is coming up. Summit Carbon Solutions is gonna have a hearing. This thing's really moving, so, you know, Sue Green Line's gonna come through here. This is kind of important, to kind of just decide one way or the other today, I hope, which one we wanna go with.
Thank you.
So, is there anything else that we kind of kicked around? I don't know. Anything else you think about? I understand. Gordy, go ahead.
Well, I think it's just a little fishy that somebody's gonna do it for free and somebody else is gonna charge you $3,500. I kind of agree with Dennis. I don't think anything's free. There's quite a bit of difference here. So why is Bolton Bank's gonna do this for free? That just throws a red cloud to me.
We're filling in the blanks.
They're saying county fill in the blanks.
Don't matter. Bolton Bank's, there's $3,500 difference here. I don't believe Bolton Bank's is gonna do it for free. They're gonna get you somewhere.
This is all, this is it. This is
I know,
If you could show me where, I'd be more inclined to be.
you know what, we'll probably have to find a different lawyer to find it. I don't trust Bolton Mix, sorry, they got bad reviews.
And Goodwin said we had good ones, so whatever Bolton Mink does, that's what we'll back up, so.
Well,
You're not hiring them for this.
Not hired.
That other counties have used.
Yeah, with an option to hire a good one,
Yes, they do them.
an option to hire a good one.
well.
So if we,
Yeah.
if we went with ISG and that good one, it'd be a $500 difference in cost.
No. The ISG is up to $3,500.
Yeah.
He is up to $3,000. So you're $6,500.
That's up too, that doesn't mean you're gonna spend that much either way.
Right, correct, correct. But as Mark said, I don't think you want to do this without Goodwin. It's just, do you think you can fill the numbers with Bob and other information from other counties and what you think those fees should be, or should you have a procedure, should you have a resolution, or?
Well, I think we've kind of fully addressed the topic here. If there's any other discussion before we consider a motion?
Well, perhaps we went with, Bolton. Would it even need a motion, because we're not spending any money with them?
Unless you want to get a charge for what they would do to help you come up with fees.
Ask the question.
Yeah, if you say, we want you to help us figure out what fees should be, then you would enter into a contract with them. But they're saying if you guys can figure out your fees, you don't need us if you can figure it out yourself.
So we're not having a letter of engagement with Bolton Mink, we're just saying we're going to, use their,
You don't have to say anything. They do both in
well,
the,
then the only letter of engagement that we're talking about is the one from Robert Goodman. I think that's, and we're gonna go with it, that would be the majority of the board, then you go with Bolton Mink at no cost, and you're engaging, Robert Goodwin for his services.
That motion,
Well, it could be.
I'll make that motion.
All right, just restate it then.
We'll engage with, Goodwin for his services and go through the process of with Bolton Bank, using their documents, and fill in the blank with
the board and make it needs to be part of the motion.
it doesn't.
Because it's,
Well, they have to know that we're using them, that they'd be there.
But we've already got their paperwork, we're gonna have Goodwin help fill it in.
Yeah.
yeah, this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's same thing. If you want to reference, Bolton Bank's participation or not, so, but that's what we'll do. That's what it is, so. So, there hasn't been a second yet, so the motion is to engage Robert Goodwin, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I think that's an important process for reasons I've stated, so I'd second that motion. There's further discussion.
We're not referencing Bolton Mink in this, or just Goodwin, right?
Correct.
When you talk about setting a feed across a drainage district, can you set it at $100,000,
No,
50,000? Where's the guideline?
I'll guarantee you that, because we have had discussions regarding this with the attorney that we have, Tim Whipple. And he has told me specifically that those types of fees, some counties has to be, there's two reasonable and, they have to be based on a cost. You can't just have a number of $10,000. They have to be based on an actual cost and redeemable, but based on a figure.
So you can't make it up.
You just can't make up
You can't
some
make it
number
outrageous.
and say, yeah, I mean, right.
So then, how do you get to setting this fee on this paper without input from Bolton Mapes?
Well, that's why you have hire an attorney who works in this area. And that's, he's done work in others.
So- This isn't as easy as just filling in the blanks. You gotta have somebody set that number that you're putting on the blanks.
Helping seems to be not only that, but also has knowledge on some of these other issues regarding
So
liability.
is that information coming from Goodwin or Bolton Mapes?
Goodman, in my case, because the motion that we're discussing would hire him to provide that information.
Okay,
Not really going to Bold Mink for anything.
Yep.
They provided this form kind of pre-gratis. And, that's what I'm kind of looking at.
They have a Bolton and Mink provided the information so good when they get the job, so Bolton and Mink will get paid anyway, because they're working together.
Well, I don't know, no. So,
I would like to make an amendment to the motion that we pay for it from the general fund.
all right,
Good ones.
all right.
Are you good with that amendment?
Yes, I'm good with that. So we're paying for the services of Robert Goodwin, at $230 an hour, up to $3,000 an hour, $3,000 total. Out of the general fund appropriation. All right. The original motion has been amended. Further discussion on the motion as amended. Any comments from anyone listening on the phone? Hearing that, we have a motion, been amended to pay for services of Robert Goodwin up to $230 an hour, $230 an hour up to $3,000 for legal advice concerning the utility drainage district resolution. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, now, review.
Mark,
Yeah,
I have a
yes.
question. Did that motion get a second?
Yeah, to seconded, made, seconded, and approved
Okay.
unanimously. We are at item 14, review action regarding resolution 2923. Vacation accrual transition for employees hired in fiscal year 23. All right. That's in the additional packet, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Here we
in
go.
the resolution,
Go ahead.
did you review it or do that?
Please go ahead. Yeah, that's 2022.
2923, the vacation transition. So this is what we had talked about through the process of updating the employee handbook. The employees who have been hired in fiscal year 23 are accruing vacation at a rate of 8 days a year. Employees hired after July 1st will get 5 days up front and then accrue 5 days, so a total of 10 days in a year. And the attorney, John Danos, had suggested that rather than putting that transition in the handbook, to just have the board do a resolution since it's a one-time thing, to give those employees who were hired in a year that 10 days total on the books. So that's what the resolution, I believe, is thoroughly explaining the difference between the what happened for a new employee in the first year of employment hired before July 1st or July 1st or after. And so you also have a list, I think there's 13 people on that list of employees who've been hired from July of 22 through June of 23, who have accrued vacation time on the books. And so there's a column that shows what their transition would be, the additional hours that they would, that's in hours, not days, but in hours that they would get on the books.
Right.
And then also, so the therefore is to direct the auditor to add that transition amount to their payroll. And then it also just, I thought that second therefore clarifies that this doesn't mean that anything else gets, their max doesn't get extended, that they can carry more on the books after year one. Nothing else changes. They still have to follow the handbook for getting the department head approval to take vacation time and have, and you know, use it timely, or they lose it. That's in the second attachment, on the second
I'm
email.
having an awful time finding that.
It's,
I got it.
there was, this
You
email
got
that
it,
was
yeah.
sent Saturday has 2 attachments, and it was the second.
Okay.
Send one of those then, Gloria, from the one you sent Saturday.
Yes,
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
So the end result of this is they're gonna get 2 days.
they'll, by the time their 1-year anniversary is up, they'll have 10 days on the books.
And so when did they get hired?
You can see on the spreadsheet, on the second page, this has their hire date.
What this is changing is they get 5 days initially, right? But when it higher,
They've been accruing up to 8 days, so they don't get 5 days. They're going to just get, their accrual is going to be adjusted to give them an equivalent of 10 days by the end of 1 year accrued on the books. So they're not gonna get 5 days plopped on, because they may, like the person who was hired in July of 22 has already earned his 8 days, but he just needs a couple of days added to the books. So that transition time from what he had actually accrued. So he's not gonna get 5 days, he's just gonna get 2 more days. Well, it's based on the accrual. The accrual was on 27 pay periods for fiscal year 23, and it was on 20, and it's 26 pay periods for fiscal year 24. And some employees are 37.5-hour employees, some are 40-hour week employees, so that we see some of the differences in the accrual rates. But like, for example, we'll give one that was hired, started June 26th, would be Elizabeth Connect. She hasn't had a payroll yet, so this first payroll, she's gonna get 5 days plopped in and start accruing 5
Right.
days over the year. So this just aligns everybody to get in 1 year time on their anniversary, they're gonna have 10 days in the 1 year accrual.
you need a motion
Go
for
ahead,
that.
further discussion? Chris?
Oh,
Why didn't this come up when we were talking about the proposal at the last meeting or before July?
It came up at both of the
Did we
department.
talk about that when we discussed when we passed, when we approved the changes to the, we did?
Yes.
We talked about this part of that meeting and maybe 2 board
And
meetings.
both board meetings we talked
Yeah.
about it, but Mike suggested doing a separate resolution rather than putting it in the handbook.
Since it's a 1-year thing, if it was in the handbook, then it'd be like, extra information that you wouldn't need in there after this. This is only gonna happen this one time, and then it'll all be fixed after that.
So this is the only one like this we're gonna see. We're not gonna be proposed to see another one on some other part of the changes.
No,
No.
this should basically squares up the people that started in the last year.
Right.
That's the difference,
It gives them a total of 10 days in their first year.
instead of 8, because they were gonna get 8.
Yeah.
So it's basically it's 2 more days of vacation over the course of the year.
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion?
I'm good.
All right. Another resolution, okay.
I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 2923, vacation accrual transition for employees hired in fiscal year 23.
I'll second.
All right, a motion by Supervisor Kiefer, second by Jordan to approve resolution 2923. Further discussion, any comments from anyone listening on the phone? Hearing none, Auditor Clark, call the roll.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Jorgensen,
Aye.
Kewen.
Aye. Resolution 2923 is passed. Item 15, review action regarding remaining salary wage certifications for fiscal year 24.
So at the last meeting, we had not received the information for the child support recovery employees out of Mason City. And we had not done the 6-month review for Jill McKean, the DCAT CPPC coordinator. So those have been done now, so you have in your packet just those 3 employees that need to be added to the list. So that is on your first agenda packet.
Got it.
Got it?
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
So it's Nancy Lund, Sandy Northrup, and then Jill McKean's review was done with, there were 4 people that did reviews on her, and the consensus was to do a 3% pay increase. She was up to, her letter of offer had up to 5%. The consensus was to do a 3% increase. That's what state employees were getting, and that's what most county employees were getting, so yeah, do a 3% increase.
And that's after the proper amount of time.
Yeah, 6 months. She
6 months,
retired
okay.
January 3rd. She
All right,
started.
next.
Yep. And then just an FYI, we have noticed that Sandy Northrup, with child support recovery, she's retiring in September. So child support recovery, they have 1 employee, they have no plans of filling those positions. So we've gone from 5 employees down to 1 employee with that. And that notice, that resignation will be at a future meeting when it gets closer to September. So I think that's the state's intent with reorganization, that they're revamping all of the way some of those positions were with these regions. And so I think just through attrition, this will end up going away. We'll no longer need that cooperative agreement anymore. It eventually will go away. So, but it might be another year or so before the other one retires.
All right.
I'll make a motion regarding the remaining salary wage certifications for fiscal year 24. Well, their names in there.
If it's okay, I'll put them in the motion.
Yeah.
And I type it, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, Lund, Northrop, and McKean.
A second.
All right, we have a motion made by Supervisor Jorgensen and seconded by Kiefer to approve the remaining maintaining solid wage certification for fiscal year 24. Further discussion? Anyone listening on the phone line like to comment? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Motion is carried. Jacob, we have arrived at item 16, discussion with county engineer regarding secondary roads activities. Thank you.
Mark, I have a question
Yes,
for the engineer and for the supervisor. When Charles City tried to put the cable in throughout the country,
yes.
who's in charge of cleaning up the mess? There's holes in the ditches, there's fences up, and there's poles stuck in the ground, and
The contractor is,
then who's gonna get after the contractor to finish the job?
which the Amtel project that was like northwest of town, or what part are you talking
I'm
about?
talking about the cable that Charles City tried to put in from Mason City. And they never finished it.
When was this project?
2 years ago?
I can look into it, I haven't dealt with that project at all, so I'll have to look into it.
Because there's holes out there, there's posts in the ground, there's silt fence put up around it, it's in the ditch, and it's a mess.
You know what contractor it was? So usually the way we do our utility permits is, the contractor has to return the working area to the previous state, or at least, they have to see, you know, if they tear the ground, they gotta see it back.
Well, they've never done that.
Yeah, they're supposed to, utility contractors are, so like we just had the utility project here this year, you know, this spring. And those guys were supposed to come through and clean up, I know they did, pretty sure they cleaned most of that up, but that's not the same project, it's different.
Right, so when's that, I mean, it's been there for 2 years and nothing has been done, I doubt if anybody's gonna be looking at it.
So it's all northwest of Charles City toward Mason City, or just west,
So it's on the 180th, on the Indigo, and I'm sure there's more of it going to the North Spring.
Okay, yeah, I can look into it, I hadn't heard anything about it, so.
So it needs to be cleaned up.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're up. Jacob.
Alright, so out of the shop, they're still doing drive permits and work orders. Our rock resurfacing project started this morning. They're mowing blacktops and gravel roads. They had total patch out the last couple of weeks, working on that. Shop wise or general routine shop maintenance, I know those guys are able to, start, they're able to do some preemptive maintenance last week, and they worked on some different things. We've been shouldering on B60. They did a culvert project down on 220th, just a replacement with our own culverts that we make in the winter. And they did some brushing and some ditch cleaning. That ditch cleaning is what they were using that dirt for, the shouldering on B60. And, yeah,
Jacob, I got a phone call sometime after the 4th from a citizen north of Floyd that was almost hit by a train on the railroad crossing on 130th,
okay,
east of Idlewild.
okay,
He called the railroad right away and they came and did some brush cleaning, but it didn't correct the problem.
Yeah.
If you're going west and you cross the railroad track, you can't see it because of trees and some private property.
okay. Yeah, so they've already contacted the railroad.
The railroad has come already and cleaned their portion of it, but what's remaining is in a fence line on private property.
On private property, okay. If it's not hanging into the right of way, we usually, I mean, we can't really do a lot about private property. If it's in the right of way, then we can ask them to clean it up. But outside of that, there's not a lot I can do with private landowners that I know of. Unless someone else knows something else about that, but.
Yeah, I didn't know what to tell him. I went and looked at it. I took some pictures and video, and if you're driving east across the tracks, you know, from the west going east, you can't see the tracks.
Okay, so it's in the east, you're eastbound, but it's on the west side of the tracks. Okay.
Yes,
Um,
south side of the road.
Okay. Yeah, was it, I mean, we can see if it's in the right of way at all, but if it's not, there's not a lot we can do either, because I can't go into someone's property to take the tree out, that I'm aware of. So I'd have to look at that, unless we can say because of our, site, from site distance, then we'd have to go maybe do, we'd have to look at site distance, I guess, and see.
Did you happen to ask the property owner if they would clean their brush up while you were there?
Well, there's a question, who owns the property? Right now, it used to be called the Decker Farm, if that means anything,
Mhm.
but I'm not, this person wasn't sure if they still owned it or not.
Did you look on the maps, the GIS maps to see?
I looked in the plat book and it didn't have Decker on that property in the most recent county directory. So.
Jacob, on a quick note, while we're talking about railroad tracks, the same thing on Jersey, south, east of Malvern.
Okay.
Where the train tracks crosses Jersey,
Yeah, that's a good one,
that's a bad deal.
Train tracks run at an angle and you can't see.
You can't see nothing.
Yeah, it's a just site problem as well.
Yeah, it's been that way for years.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, but if you're looking around for them train track crossings, there's another one.
Yeah, if it's if they have brush in the way, if it's in the road right away, then they usually will come and clean it up. If it's in our right away, we can clean it up. Outside of that, it gets a little more difficult to deal with. I don't know if those have crosswalks and signals, that's probably what needs to get put in.
Well, yeah, there's crosswalks, but
Sorry, yeah, arms, sorry, they don't have the arms there probably.
Well, there's no arms, there's no lights, there's no nothing.
no,
Yeah,
that's not.
so there's
You drive down there sometimes, it's the angle, just the angle of the road and the tracks is, with the trees is really bad.
Yeah, there is a fund that the railroad can apply for, a safety fund through the DOT that they can get, you know, the arms, the lights, they can get that stuff for their crossings. I don't know if the railroad needs to receive a complaint to apply for it, I'm not sure of that process, but I do know there's a railroad crossing safety fund, basically.
Okay.
So that does exist. It's an application to the DOT, and I'm sure they receive a lot, and I think I think once you apply, it'll stay in their system until it's awarded. So it might take years down the road, but
Yeah.
that there is a fund for it. So
Okay.
I'm not sure what qualifies, because that's what they're gonna look at. Who do we give it to? So I don't know if they prioritize paved roads or if they prioritize angle intersections, or, I don't know what they do, if they look at traffic count, probably all of those things.
Sure.
So,
All right.
thank you guys. And then, office wise, our S7 project was completed a couple weeks ago north of Norris Springs. It turned out pretty good. We ran it at I think it was 100.9%, so we're within 1% on a $1.3 million job, so that's pretty dang good. The pavement marking project, countywide pavement marking project, they finished all the straight line painting before the 4th. And then they're coming back this week to do all the handwork, so they'll finish that project this week. We finished our railroad tank car project on 130th, just west of Victory over there. I thought that turned out pretty nice. It built the road up a little bit through there, but I think that'll be a good project. I called you guys last week. We received bids on our loader that we had budgeted for. This is where I said the bids came in a little higher than we thought. We budgeted 200,000. The bids were 222,000 from Murphy Tractor and 218,000 from Cat, and then 209,000 from Housby Volvo. The Housby Volvo didn't have all the specifications that we wanted on the loader, and I don't know that it would have been the best option for us, so we opted to go with the Cat. I think I did make a mistake. I thought you guys would see a claim today. We won't pay for it till it's delivered. So you won't see that claim for a while yet. Cat was talking 4 to 6 month delivery time. Housby, to get what we wanted on that equipment, the delivery date wasn't gonna be for 10 to 12 months. They would have had to send it to Sweden to put some hydraulics in that we needed. So that was also a deciding factor. So hopefully we can get that loader in before winter. We use that to help plow, the parking lots here and then out at DHS. And then, also we use it to load salt and sand mix in our operations, so. And then next week, we have our 155th and Victory Bridge Replacement Project, that'll be next week. So we'll receive bids on that, and, hopefully that we get a few different competitive bids, or not, we'll see, and that's all through the DOT system. And then, other than that, we've just been doing our normal, office work, keeping up with all that, so. I was looking, and it's not a requirement, it's, once you do that kind of budget time, you know? So we budgeted for that piece of equipment, so it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's different practices amongst different engineers. I don't know, I think I have enough in the budget that it should be fine. But it's not that I can find, I've talked to some other counties, last couple of weeks about it. And I didn't see anything in there that would be an issue. Otherwise, I think that's pretty much everything I had, unless you guys had any other questions or anything like that.
No, have none, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you guys.
All right, item 17, no resignation of public health employee. And who is that other than?
Michelle, was this good?
Oh, okay. Is duly noted. No receipt of donation for courthouse flowers and gardening.
Well, this was a nice surprise. Actually, came up a while back with Ruth Farmer. I received a call from the Community Foundation, or actually an email from the Community Foundation, asking if we had a project going on for flowers and around the, or for a project around the courthouse, landscaping around the courthouse, from Terry Gomer. And I responded to her because this was at the time of the Veterans Memorial Project going on also. So I responded that the Veterans Memorial Committee was doing a landscaping project with plantings around the memorial outside of the courthouse, but that would be their own project. And so if Ruth's intent was for this money to go towards that, her donation should go to that 501c3 committee. Or I said, we were also talking about work here at the courthouse as well, in front of the atrium area that we're talking about. And Terry responded back that she was going to process the grant for Floyd County because that's what Ruth's request was for Floyd County. And so she did add courthouse flowers / gardening in the description. She said the new addition is part of the courthouse grounds and landscaping includes gardening, similar terms. So you should be able to use it to offset your expenses. The grant is for received the check, $1,550. So I meant to bring a thank you card for you all to sign to Ruth, so I've got one upstairs. Thought it'd be nice to do that.
Well, certainly. And again, the name of the person, Ruth Farmer.
Farmer, it's her trust, it's the Farmer Family Endowment Fund. But Ruth Farmer was the one who emailed Terry and said she wanted money to go towards the courthouse.
All right, very good. And we will, thank you.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Thank you to sign.
Future agenda items.
We need to do something with the wind farm, maybe get updated on.
Sure. Might be a
Since we did that.
good idea to get the project who's planning to come talk to us, because I think that would be kind of the first step.
I think you're right.
Yeah, I'll try to make that happen.
Thank you.
Earlier on, like back in April, Larry Bortz sent me the Worth County ordinance. Did he send that to you guys too?
I believe I have it yet.
Yeah.
I know I got it. I think it's probably still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
I think that's probably what he was referring to, if we're doing something similar to
Mhm.
what Worth County did.
mhm.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if we can get the developer here to talk to us about their project.
Sounds like
Is
a
that
good start.
Nextera, is that the name of that company?
Well, there's 2 or 3 of them running around the county, so I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, the board is with him, so I think it's the one, that's the one that fixed.
The Nextera is up in my neck,
Yeah.
that's where they are. Brewers had a different one. There's one down Riverton Township, so I think Amy's office, the recorder's office would have all those, contacts, or I thought there's 3 different ones. Don't quote me, but
All right, well, we'll look into it
sure.
and respond to their requests. Anything else?
That's all I got.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I still move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. Hey, papers signed, right?
Yes, I think I have a bunch.
Okay.